some people who aren't making it today. Yeah, it's I'm looking at it. Obviously, I was over in the UK recently for a little bit, and I was just starting to see how people are starting to become more and more overwhelmed because just the repetition of the theme. I was reading an article the other day just saying when something doesn't stop, when it's pummeling people, that's when the morale starts to go and the trauma starts to kick in. But and personally, I mean, I'm looking at my own astrology, but the last 2 months has been good. I've been very busy over the year, and the last 2 months I've been almost like on sabbatical, which is what teachers do. They go on a summer holiday. So I'm being kind on myself, but I'm also thinking, you know, how much is this that I'm overwhelmed from too much screen time, all of these things. I need a break from the screen. So, and I need to be ready to teach this course. So I think that this is the whole thing. And we saw it coming some years ago. We knew there was going to be something big would happen on the planet. And I remember I used to channel and say, there's going to be a time where people are going to start getting sick the minute they go into the workplace, you know, because they're not going to understand that they've changed. And then they're going to start having these psychosomatic responses to the minute they go in the door. And you think of people who are sitting in fluorescent lit rooms and desks and things like that. And every time we have like a lockdown or something, in a way, there's a long-term benefit from this because the whole world is going to change. And I hope that this is for the good. We've got a few interesting years to come, but how can we as compassionate practitioners look at this and start to look at the markers in our systems and then think, well, goodness, you know, we've all got a relative degree of autonomy and mindfulness around where we're at. So scaling that up so that we can assist our communities. And that's, again, why if we can hold space for each other over the autumn and winter, I think in the spring, because spring, you know, February is usually a really depressing month in the global north. And we just need to be really, really ready and start to hold space for each other to get these tools to our communities. And I just want to say something linked to that. One sister who's based in Thailand at the moment, but's from Kenya, she is going to be receiving the teachings, and then she's working with an engaged group. When she was back in Kenya a few months ago, she's got a group of women who've never been able to have their voice. They've never been expected to be anybody, and they've never talked about their generational trauma. She's going to be disseminating her tools to them. So there's a really beautiful Dharma part of the course that if you all feel like you want to engage a few people and use these tools, that's something I'm happy to also sometimes come on and mentor with. Is you might have 6 people, you might have a focus group that you decide in 3 months, okay, I want to start working with them. We're really up for that, because these little steps of how are we going to get this to a few people we've got engaged, I'm really, really in service to that. So how can we, you know, make it real, not just work on ourselves, but actually have like 4 people that each of you decides to work with over the months. So just know that there is one sister. The whole reason the course came about was because she requested these teachings. And then I said, well, I think more people need it. I'm in service to these older women in Kenya, and I'll come on occasionally, but I'm coaching you. Okay, and so these women are ready for the teachings. They're ready to get started with pranayama. And yeah, just to let you know, you're all very encouraged to do that as well. Okay, who would like to share now?
Yeah. Can you hear me? You there? Yeah, okay. Hi. And just to say, I'm going to have to leave at 11 for our football practice. But hello, everybody. Yeah, I suppose one of the things that you're talking about is this constellation that feels really important, actually, in these traumatic times that we're going in, and having that support network, and also, yeah, just sharing in some of your wonderful knowledge that you've gathered over the years. So I work in community mental health for the NHS, and I'll also do a little bit of teaching in that. So it'd be nice to bring in some more of these tools, although you know, I promote things like internal family systems and that kind of thing all the time, give people a tool is always helpful. Yeah, and obviously it's going to link into our own traumas as well. None of us are escaping really at the moment. I think the one thing that keeps dragging me into any fear, because I'm quite good at being detached from what's going on at the moment, but it's my job. With them as well, will be really interesting. But so among us through this time seems really, really important. So thank you, Panel. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yay. And yeah, you know, this is it. It's, for me, it feels like constellation is really important, as you said. Last year, I remember that it just felt really solid to me that there were some people who'd come on every so often who needed a bit of a self-energy boost. We'll be talking about that when we get to IFS in the course. And it just felt, I was in Mexico where there's lots of self-energy about, and it just felt like, wow, just if I can hold space for 6 people, that's something. If each of us is holding space for just a few people, that's something. And just again, I guess, just even if, as we talk about overwhelm today, I think it's about compartmentalizing things and sometimes realizing it's just the little things. If everybody holds space for a couple of people, and if they're there, they're tight, that's how we're going to keep our communities strong. So yeah, so it's exciting to me to actually feel I'm ready to teach all of this stuff and get it out there. But there's something more exciting is my inner SWAT wants to teach you all more. And as I say, I've got other practitioners who like, I'd give a teaching, and I'm like, if we've got the right group, we're going to go with this. And obviously some people will sometimes come on just because they want to come to one session, but the backbone of people, I'm ready to just keep going, not in an overwhelming way, but it's like, let's spill the beans, let's get it all out there. So just to let you know that what it says on paper, that's like a spine, but there's lots more, and you're all super intelligent and all doing amazing work. So that's really exciting to me. Okay. Yay.
Yeah, I can talk now. I live in Adelaide, Australia. And yeah, I've been working with Pat McKay this whole sort of year, so I was definitely keen to jump on board with new teachings. And it's just the timing. It's what I've got to help, like, just everyday people is just phenomenal. I feel like I'm almost there, but a few more tools, and then I'll be ready to actually engage. And just I love the idea of holding space for people. Energy, and it's not done in the world, and it's a big calling. And yeah, to have some tools where we're all in overwhelm and the trauma at the moment, to have some tools to break the ice with those sort of things and hold as well. Yeah, it's just powerful. And it's an honor to work with everyone.
Thank you so much, Tara. Yay, it's great to have you there. And, you know, we've been working in quite quantum stuff, and it's very important that we kind of fill in the Russian doll, because some people, we can't get in to do maybe ancestral work because we have to work with the breath or something else. So it's going to be really good to map that. And it almost feels like, as a constellation for people going, I get it, that also helps the collective trauma body to somehow unravel, because we have such access to insights that we didn't have. And 20 years ago, when I first started working with trauma theory, it was very much, let's get a sledgehammer and let's get this trauma, right? And Mike is nodding because she probably got a little bit of that in her training. And then in more recent years, they found like that's really re-traumatizing. And so we've come on, it's really interesting that we're now at a point where we have this angle on genetics and epigenetics and generational trauma, and we can start to place those within our understanding. We can start to say things like, oh, we can do quantum work on that, or actually that needs yoga, that needs breath, this needs IFS, and this is what I feel, you're all real smart cookies, is that's what you need. Because when we do that, you're actually able to have your client, and whether that's your brother, your sister, or somebody in the service that you're working in, you can have them held and gridded in a more sophisticated way. And you can also know how to refer. Okay, and where is this? Is there somebody in our group who's got a skill set because of their professional background, or where is there a modality that you see what's happening is there are a lot of trauma modalities that don't cut it. And so sometimes people are working with a client and the client just starts throwing out bait because their system. So sometimes the client's system is ahead of the game. It's like, they are not resourcing me enough. This is not going to cut it. I'm just going to throw the little scraps. So do people get to that point of overwhelm in their system, which was the point where it felt like it was worse than death? That's obvious, almost always very submerged. And so nearly all modalities don't work with that. So the important thing is that you are aware of that and aware of how the new neurobiology of trauma has now found a new part of the brain, which this we'll be talking about right at the end, okay? Because we have to work with you all first. We have to work with the fact that we're all overwhelmed first. And actually, so we have to start with basics on us, okay? So there's no point in me talking about neurobiology to us right now, because we all got goldfish memory, and we're all like, I can't concentrate for more than 3 minutes, okay? So, but down the line, I'll be able to explain these things so that you can actually start to see, sometimes it's like this person is not feeling safe, okay? And how can we help them with that? Because actually a lot of modalities in this world are just beating around the bush, okay? And I'm not saying that you're going to come out of this course trained to do that really complex stuff, but to spot it, to know what the referrals would be that are safest, okay, for certain clients. And I'm really happy to share that with you. And I'm brushing up on my training on those. And again, I don't work with some of these modalities with certain people because I would give a referral, but I'll be able to explain to you that's the hallmarks of somebody in that, okay? So that you can really know how to get to the point, okay? This is what we've got to do, okay? Great. Trish or Helena?
So I'm Helena, and I'm interested sort of in two sides. So personally, I've been on quite a journey with my own trauma, and overwhelm has definitely been a feature recently. I've been exploring different modalities to work out what works for me, and I've done a lot of unraveling in the last couple of years. So continuing that journey, but also my main sphere of work is very different, but I felt sort of holding space for others. So really interested just to discover what is on offer, what might work for me, and how I can go on to help others unravel and release.
Thank you so much. And yeah, I really hope we can do that. I think I think so many people need to find their niche with some of these because you'll have a specialism. And so we really want to equip you to be feeling confident, because we'll all have, where our core wounds are and how those play out in our specialities. And as we know thyself, it means that you can then go, okay, well, I need to go and do training in CRM or a sensory motor psychotherapy. So I'm really available to give you extra teachings on things like that, and also to signpost you. And I've also got quite a lot of cheeky, journal articles and things like that for those of you who are like, I'm feeling really excited about this one. I will send you extra materials if you want them. Okay. Trish?
Hello, yeah, I'm going to have to keep my camera off because when I'm great at all, I'll try and sort it out for next time. So experience around overwhelm and about I've been a social worker for over 20 years now, and had a break from adult services because I felt so very read a lot of Gabor Mate's work a lot of times in childhood, and so went into children's social work thinking that perhaps if I moved in make a more positive change, but I just feel that just on a very personal, not for me. I don't feel that I'm making any, I don't think I'm making any benefit to the point now with my most recent job, which I've just left, of thinking that actually I think the system's probably set up to fail. And so I'm looking now to do something more extended. So I've started a breathwork course, and then I was interested in doing this course as well. And I think that just I think trauma is just quite tangible, you know, and I think it's just something needs to happen, and that's me.
Thank you so much, Trish. And yeah, unfortunately, I agree with you about a lot of these services, and it's no fault of people, but they're just so archaic and overrun with bureaucracy that it's very hard for people to get that holistic knowledge and to work. You know, I think we need everybody out in nature doing deep rehabilitation, and this is the Aquarian age we're stepping into. And in the next few years, if any of you want, yay, we've got lots of Gabor Mate fans, he's amazing. So when we are astrology, if any of you are interested in astrology, I will do astrological aspects of this to help you understand the times we're coming into, the timeline we're on. It seemed that around 2023, it'll be kicking in to be more person-led and community-led. At least there are going to be the inklings of that. Some of us need to be getting trained up now for new systems. Things like money, everything's going to look very different in the next year and a half. And by 2025, it's going to be big new shifts. So a lot of these Aquarian quantum ways of looking and novel technologies are going to be coming in, and we have to get people into the body, or else they're not going to really, cool, I love that you say yes to astrology, because that's like my backbone with a lot of this. So I'm happy to keep contextualizing as well, because in Vedic astrology, if you kind of know firstly where your own karma is, or we know like next month's going to be rocky, you're able to be factoring that into your life so that you can counteract it and you can stay afloat. This was what they wanted the yogis to always be mobile. So basically we can offset things. So I can be like, okay, next month's what to watch and things like that. I'm happy to give context because this is where our liberation lies. And part of the astrology in a few years is, as I say, a lot of these technologies coming in that are very, we've got an elder we work with, Patrine, and she's been looking at it and saying, if you're not in your body, it's going to be very hard to cope. Now, people are not in their body because they're dissociating, their attention's gone. So this is going to be our job, is for us to work with ourselves, work with a small pod, and then start to work with small groups of people so we can ripple that out. And ideally, then we have other programs to help people to rewire from within. So we're on timeline. I was watching an astrologer yesterday talking about the timeline. So I was like, wow, this course even is right on the timeline of get our little mini team ready and then keep going. Cool. So I'm going to, I love that you say that to astrology, get ready. I mean, because as I say, I'm putting all the trimmings. It just makes, it's more fun for me that way. I'm a bit of a SWAT and I want to share this. So I'm going to give a little presentation now, and it's just a very basic overview. You're going to say, wow, just how much stuff there is. And I'm sure to some degree I'm preaching to the converted. I think you're all very up on this. So forgive me that it's basic. in a way, I started with a very, very basic presentation today because we are in overwhelm, okay? So I don't want to fry your brains, okay? And I just thought some pictures rather than talking might help. So we did the checking in, and I guess to identify overwhelm it's a huge thing. And I'm not necessarily equating overwhelm with trauma, but it is really, so to some degree. And I think you all know what overwhelm feels like and looks like. And sometimes you aren't aware until, just like trauma, sometimes you're not aware until somebody mentions it, or you suddenly hear it and you go, wow, I'm in that. So presently, we have, I guess, a lot of the hallmarks of the overwhelm are our attention spans are very affected. Our energy bodies can feel very fatigued. We're having issues with a lot of things like screen time or text-based resources, things like reading books, anything like that. And just sometimes feeling like I can't cope, this is too much, and just feeling I think I spoke to a friend of mine who's a herbalist recently, and what we're saying is, anytime we do something social, it takes twice as long to recover all of these things, and just feeling very anxious sometimes as well when we're going into social settings. And a lot of that is because neurologically there's a lot going on for us at the moment. But I'm going to deconstruct this in little sections as well. There's a lot going on for us, but also if we look at this from a more psycho-spiritual perspective, we're actually in a chrysalis and there's something big going on. So we're in a liminal, marginal place. And it's quite tricky when the outside world is trying to dictate to us that there's a certain way that we've got to be back to business as normal, when the process that we're in, and if you look at the astrology of it, it's not done yet. And therefore, we are kind of stuck in this limbo. So anything that's beyond what's actually necessary for here and now, and that can sometimes be just having a shower and doing a bit of breath work, can be very, very difficult. And so I just really want you all to know that you're normal if you're feeling that way at the moment. And different people will be picking this up in different ways. And this would be linked to the astrology, which we can look into during the course. But because of the Saturn-Jupiter conjunctions last year, collectively, we all had that. So we've got a collective astrology. And so that's still, no matter what houses that's sitting in for you, you've got your Jupiter, which is all expanded, and your Saturn, which is trying to constrict things, playing off each other. So you have this wonky, oh, I'm supposed to be epic, oh no, I'm not able to. And sometimes that means that we feel a little bit deficient because we're kind of rendered a little bit redundant, okay? And that's because Saturn is actually helping us to look at old karmas and trying to say, don't try to expand too much at the moment. That's not what's here just yet. But where we're programmed in a very yang society to be, what we say, target focused and outcomes and objectives based. And that's all usually very much based around quantifiable outcomes, especially in the workplace. That's really tricky for where we're at. And that conditioning then leads us to these feelings of inadequacy, where then childhood wounds come up, which are old abandoned wounds and unprocessed traumas, and the overwhelm kicks in. So there's a lot going on. And as we deepen onto the actual course, one of the sessions will be about how does trauma work, so looking at things like the amygdala, the limbic system, the parasympathetic nervous system, and things like that. But we won't do any of that until we've worked with overwhelm first. So we're going to, when we do the course, the first 3 sessions are going to be very much about just what I was saying earlier. How do we deal with that, getting ourselves from up here where we're just in this pool of mud that we can't even wade or swim through, to go down to here where we can actually think again. So the first 3 sessions are very much about yin ways of working. So we'll be working with pranayama in the first, then emotional freedom and tapping and why that works in the second, and the third one, the psoas muscle and trauma release exercises to get you down to here. At least I'm maybe down to here. Let's see. Okay. So there are many types of overwhelm. I think, though, for all of us right now, I think just to say that's what we're in a collective overwhelm right now. And I had written that because I thought that Angelita or Madalena were going to be coming, who they've just made a podcast about overwhelm. Micah, did you do that podcast? No, you didn't.
No, I don't think so.
Okay,
no.
cool. So I'm going to leave that and just park that. But basically, we have so much sensory overwhelm. We also have psychic overwhelm. We have collective overwhelm. We have karmic overwhelm. So many of us are ripening our relationship to karma that's been accumulating for lifetimes, but it feels wonky for a while. But actually what's happening is the system is starting to recognize that something's come up to be cleared. Okay. Sorry, sometimes it comes up as unstable, so I'll just pause. Okay, and there are many, many other sorts, but those are just a few that I can mention just off the top of my head. Okay, and so we need different tools for different sorts of these overwhelms. Sometimes for overwhelm, what we need to do is just, I think this is the basic code for all overwhelm, is stop. Stop and know that the universe has got your back. And this is the difficult part with our programming, is that, oh, but I'm going to lose my job, all of this. There's actually such an innate intelligence at the moment that I'm finding that, okay, I just have to stop and sit and stare at a wall. And the universe is like, that's exactly what you've got to do. And don't worry, we paid your bills for you somehow. Okay. And just letting us be kind to ourselves. So first law of overwhelm is stop. I would say the second is start to breathe. Okay. And just deep breathing. And that's why we start with pranayama, is to share with you several special pranayamas for different things. And I'm going to explain how those all work. And I'm going to give you more teachings on those. Okay. And so, yes, so that's all going to come in the later part of this little mini presentation. Okay. So I think I've kind of talked about this a little bit. I'm going to go to the fourth point, which is the inability to regulate. So if we were talking about trauma, we would say a person dysregulated. Okay, so this is sometimes where we are very triggered to the point that we're not in the body, or we're dissociating, or we're hyper aroused, where we're in hypervigilance, where everything is kind of a possible threat, or sounds and things will be very, very shocking, or hypo-aroused, which is that we actually disengaged and we're very lethargic. Okay, so sometimes this feeling of overwhelm that we've got at the moment is also this part of paralysis. So sometimes we're dissociated as well. And it's quite difficult to know at the moment, are we in a massive dissociation, or are we spiritually disengaging from what is a dream? And it's a tricky one, because PTSD, if a person has PTSD, and I'll talk a little bit about that during the course, some theorists would say PTSD only comes from a really, really harsh event, like, coming out of a tsunami or something. And some people would criticize people for using PTSD lightly as a terminology. But, sometimes it's that thing, is that world, it's like a fantasy world. Now, during the course, if you wish, there are actually reasons why that could actually be our reality right now. So I will be coming into Buddhism, the Kalachakra Tantra. And if you want, I can also talk about prophecies, which have said the timelines are going to split a little bit. So at the moment, because, for instance, I was traumatized when my mum died when I was 15, but I was also working with medicines to help me to work with that. And I was also doing my GCSEs. And so everything was just a bit bizarre. And at one point I was like, oh, you know, is this because of these medicines I'm taking, which were plant medicines, or is it, you know, am I traumatized? And sometimes it's hard to unpick. So sometimes psychospiritually, we're being asked not to engage with the world outside and not to read newspapers and go into these samsaric realms. So it'd be very interesting to unpick during the course, is it dissociation or is it actually psychospiritual? Okay, so we can look at things like that, because the trauma spectrum and looking and pathologizing trauma will be very interesting to look at in that respect. So the crux of it, though, is, are we able to regulate or not? And if a person is dysregulated, they're not able to process simple information. They're not present in any sort of setting. So are you finding that you're not present with anybody? Are you finding that you can't regulate when you need to? That's the sort of thing we need to map and look at. And things like EFT and TRE and breath work are amazing for getting us back in the body. And this is ultimately what we want to do in the first three sessions, is get you back in your body and get your multidimensional being connected with your self energy and your soul energy and all of those things. So sorry, I should have this in a different setting, but I didn't, so I'm slightly flipped out myself. It's just too complicated sometimes with this, so sorry that you've got the little things at the side. Okay, so there are many body-based solutions for overwhelm and trauma, and I think many of you will have read Bessel van der Kolk's seminal text, The Body Keeps the Score. And Bessel was like one of the frontline renegade people back in the day. And he's highly revered for what he's brought to trauma theory. And so his book, if you haven't read it, I really recommend you read it, just really explores how coming back to the body is so important for us to regulate from trauma. And by the way, in this little presentation, there are a lot of modalities I don't mention that are actually going to be ones that we do mention in the course. So you can look at the course overview and see. Anyway, Bessel mentions modalities like internal family systems, yoga, I think he mentions somatic experiencing. And there are people who have developed certain modalities for trauma yoga. Okay, there's like Deirdre Fay, who's got amazing work. She sometimes teaches in Ireland. And I can also show you some yogas that work for trauma. And this also goes hand in hand with the pranayama. And as I said, with the way Pluto's going to be acting in a few years, what we all need to do is get back in our bodies so that we're not checking out. And we need to work from there on in. So starting to understand where trauma is stored, things like the psoas muscle, and also understanding things like polyvagal theory, which we may look at later on in the course, are going to be important. Just learning where different things are stored and how they work so that you can come and just cancel it out. I had, for instance, what would be regarded by many as a very, very traumatic situation that happened a few years ago. But I had things like TRE. So I was like, I'm in what could be seen as a traumatic situation. So the minute it happened, I was very present throughout the situation, but I knew how it might manifest in the body. So I just did TRE for a few days after it. And it meant that I was able to just put it in a certain place where it's not manifesting as my present day. And this is something that I'm going to be talking about a lot in the course, is this concept of implicit memory. And so what happens is when we are not processing trauma, it's stuck in the body, it's stuck as parts, it's frozen somewhere. And anytime something that's slightly reminiscent of it, and it can be in quite an arbitrary way, can be like, oh, you know, somebody was wearing a red scarf the day the thing happened. We see somebody with a red scarf, and we suddenly, because the trauma is stuck, we suddenly are acting to something that happened in the past. So we're maybe speaking to the person with the red scarf like they're a perpetrator, and they're actually a cashier in a shop. Okay, and this is how things like war can affect people, where you sometimes see things like as somebody goes in and does and shoots people in the school because something, they may be a war veteran, and something sparks that implicit memory, and they go back, they go into a rewire. And I've worked with war veterans quite closely back in the day, like this is about 20 years ago, and they were just flipping into these different robot roles. They were going, yes, ma'am, yes, 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 ma'am, and all sorts of crazy stuff, and living something out because something had put them into that implicit memory. And so we sometimes have to work with people to help them to realize that it's not, they're in the present. So trauma affects our relationship with time and place. And that's going to be a very big part of the work, is helping to understand how you start to create a moment, a break with that's not today, that person's not involved, and how you flip the switch and how we work with neuroplasticity. So I'm moving off here right now from the body-based solutions, but a lot of things will happen. So basically, in sensory motor psychotherapy, a lot of the solutions to that implicit memory where we're acting to a historical activity actually happen through programming ourselves to do something like do 5-star jumps when you realize you're doing that, or touch your toes, or do an asana, you know. So this is actually where having a body-based activity to reprogram sends a signal to the brain, which is then like that trauma can be rewired. Okay, so these things go part and parcel together, and this is why things like yoga are so important, because they're not agitating to the system, and they're actually doing something neurologically whilst helping us to realize we're not stuck in the past and not thinking everybody who's got a red scarf is a mass murderer. Okay. Something we are going to be talking about a lot, and for you all to maybe look at, we hear a lot of talk about mindfulness, and it's kind of gone into the very public domain that's quite hip and cool at the moment. And I guess my work is more about ancient and traditional ways of working with the radical psychology of the mind. So I'm a practicing Kalachakra Tantra practitioner, which is a form of Buddhism. And for me, Buddhism is very much about how we can utilize the mind and mindful techniques to overcome a lot of these things that keep us suffering. So I will be talking about that later a little bit more, but often we are stuck in, especially the Western world, of a process of what they call self-cherishing. We can get very, very stuck, and this is something that can happen when we're overwhelmed, is we're so busy thinking, oh my goodness, I'm so stuck, I don't know what's going on, that we get submerged by the mud. And within Buddhism, we counteract that immediately. When we start to notice we're going into that sort of thing, we go, whoa, 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 I'm self-cherishing, because we're actually getting into the ego's taking over. And if we understand that we're actually connected as a self, as a soul, to a larger framework, and we start to counteract this implosion with mindful activities like compassion and generosity, we can actually get out of the trauma and the overwhelm. And I did my doctorate on Japanese culture and occupation theory, and obviously having grown up in Belfast during an occupation was quite central to some of that. And it's interesting, people haven't looked at Asian trauma very much. And there's just been a book that's come out this year, which I'm really interested in. And And it's slightly racist because a lot of people think, well, they're just very collectivized and they don't have an individual and they just go like robots. And that's very, very racist. And that's what the book's decolonizing that perspective. But there's something about looking at cultures where people do go into repetitive techniques to work through overwhelm and trauma. And that's not to say the trauma is not there, that needs to be dealt with, but we're an interesting legacy generation where we had adults, our family lines, they didn't get therapy, they didn't get polyvagal theory and all of this, and they didn't die, and they went through more abject traumas than we did. We're the ones who get very super sensitive, and it's almost like we've got an accumulation of all these karmas and all these timelines to deal with, but we're very like poor me about stuff. And our ancestors couldn't be poor me, they just had to get out in the field in the freezing weather and cut those potatoes, or all these things. So what's happened there is we do have something to look at from the ancestors. We're the ones who have to defrost it, because a lot of them have soul fragments that they haven't dealt with, and this is what we do a lot of quantum work with. And internal family systems is sometimes actually we're working beyond the subpersonalities of our own traumas to the ones that have been frozen by our ancestors that need to be recognized because the family can't rest. But we have interesting vantage points to look at with some cultures where they can't afford to have a bad hair day and look at the wall. And actually there may be some keys in there as to how repetitious activities can help us to work with trauma, because I think we have it too good with having the space and time to self-cherish sometimes. And I think we do need to look around us at the world of the people who get to go through hideous things and actually seem to get out. I mean, okay, there's some stuff still to heal, but they do manage to go through it. And we're all like, oh, my pet hamster died and would work for 2 years, so there's something to learn from looking at the world around us. And something that can help that I really encourage you all to do is things like mantra, because the repetitious aspect of working with sacred sound takes you out of that suffering and takes you into a place where the mind goes into a different space. And things like using mantra when we are very wobbly and very overwhelmed. A few months ago, I was like, I feel a bit, and I just thought, I'm just going to put on mantras and just sit doing mantras for an hour. And I just felt brilliant afterwards, because it takes you out of the monkey mind, it takes you out of the body as well. And just and it's also sacred. So these are things that we're going to be able to teach on the course, and I really recommend. So, as I said, we're going to be also talking about emotional freedom technique, tapping. And this has been very, very useful for people like war veterans. And just it rewires implicit patterns where we're often very self-defeating and shameful about certain things, and we actually tap it away through tapping certain key points. So we'll be teaching you how to do that with Angelita, who's been teaching EFT for a long time. And again, I'm also going to be teaching what is self-energy. A lot of the time we're overwhelmed is because intrinsically we've got very embroiled with the afflicted parts of ourself. And these are the parts of us that are actually they're not real. They're not who we are. And there are some modalities like the wholeness technique at the moment, which rather than taking too much time dealing with parts and the subpersonalities that we've got, we sometimes actually just focus on the core self that is the Buddha within us. We've all got our Buddha-like nature. And often what we're needing to do is just to resource ourselves to get the core back. So within this course, we'll be able to help you to find that resource and help to find it and work with other people with it. Last year, as I mentioned, I found it really useful to just work with people once every week or 2 weeks. We were doing just self energy boosts for people. We were just sitting, boosting that core self energy to people and just helping them to find it. Because if it's very depressing and somebody's stuck in the inner city and it's February, it can be very easy to just become submerged with the afflictions that are not who we are, that are the bits that just got conditioned into us or got formed because of trauma. And actually, we can start to resource ourselves to actually find that core. So mindful techniques are great for that, okay? Something also that I really, really encourage, because we have got it good, you know, we're not in Syria or the Yemen or Afghanistan, which is very topical at the moment, is just sometimes just sitting and going, okay, 10 things that I want to say I'm grateful for. And that can bring you back immediately. Just suddenly like, wow, you know, I've got a roof over my head, I've got 2 pairs of shoes and all of these things. And just to practice gratitude, very simple. When we're overwhelmed, we often forget we've got these simple tools that we already knew. And that's again why I'm saying some things today that are really basic, because sometimes you might have been overwhelmed, just forgot to do that for a few weeks. So again, what we can do over the course is make a kind of checklist of tools, because then you just look at your checklist, laminate it and put it somewhere and be like, oh, I didn't do that, I can do that. This is what I found over the recent years, and I guess I've been preparing for this time, was sometimes I'd be like, and then I'd be like, why am I like this? Why could I not do anything about it? And then suddenly after sitting wallowing, sometimes we have to wallow for a while, be still, be like a fallow field. You know, in nature, you have a fallow period with things, but and then just sit. And then suddenly a tool will be like, you've got this tool. And they'll be like, oh, it's that tool. So sometimes you have to be, and then it comes back in. So yeah. So maybe we'll get these laminated checklists. It'll be really useful because this is something we can make for other people as well. And finally, again, I was talking about the self-cherishing. It can be in this time, and this is where astrology is really helpful. Sometimes what we've got is ripening karma. And as I mentioned earlier, where we had Jupiter and Saturn conjunct last year, and they've been doing little bits of that again this year. That means that there are different karmic things coming up for different people. So we've got this collective karma on the planet, which is meaning cause and effect of things that maybe happened in past lives are coming for now. So actually, when we look at it from a Buddhist perspective, it's a great thing, because if something's ripening, it means you've got a chance to clear it. But we're often like, I'm so pummeled, I don't know what to do. And if we can start to go, right, I'm being shown this because I can counteract this. Jyotish, which is the science of light, which is connected to Vedic astrology. It's basically a matter of learning how to do the remedies for things, because actually what happens is often we're overwhelmed because a karma is ripening. And a karma can ripen, be very, very unpleasant. But a karma can also be counteracted and antidoted and remedied with something very basic. So what happens is, because we don't often have a knowing and an insight about its karma, everything's karma, it's cause and effect, all stuff coming, ripening for us. We often are like just overwhelmed while we're processing it and having to, it's almost like getting our punishment, okay? And we feel very punished, and that's not empowering. With Jyotish, the idea is you find where the karma is and you start to see, okay, I've got a Saturn that's like this in my chart. And you basically learn how you can basically meet it head on. So sometimes all you have to do is not eat breakfast on a Saturday, and it means you don't have to have this bit. And actually in Vedic astrology, it's the karma can be dealt with something really easy rather than it coming and paralyzing you. So we've now got this time where a lot of people that we know have all gone to start studying Vedic astrology recently, because obviously the cosmos is saying, guys, you're taking this too hard. You just need to like wear black shoes on a Friday, stuff like that. And I can attest to it. I've been like zero pointing loads of this stuff in the last year, and loads of amazing things are happening in my life. And I'm like, okay, something's ripening, show me. because I've now got to the point where I'm like really realizing what a blessing it is when something's coming up, but I'm also knowing we've got the ability to offset it, and that's available for all of us now. So if you start to think, oh my goodness, this thing's ripening, and actually then you do a bit of research, you can actually find a way where if you've made a pledge, I want to be in service, and I don't want to be pummeled for 3 months lying on my couch crying every day, then the universe will be like, yeah, well, here's this antidote. You actually just have to, wear blue. And it's like, oh, I'll wear blue, no problem. And then suddenly you get all these rewards because you've met it head on rather than waiting for the suffering part of it. So that's something that we'll be able to do readings for you all and things like that along the way if it's interesting to you. Okay, now this is not necessarily in the trauma course, but again, if we've got a little nice magical SWATy team, I'm more than happy to do a session on this as well. Sometimes overwhelm is happening because we've got an imbalance in our body and because of Western diets and maybe things like eating too much processed food. Often it's things like we can have magnesium deficiency is very, very common in the Western world. And something for people who maybe don't eat meat and things is often B6, B12, of course, but B6 particularly for mood and anxiety, and zinc as well. So taking things like vitamin B6 and zinc and even putting on topical magnesium oil or having magnesium baths, you can find that these can often help your overwhelm. Okay, so I just wanted to put those in because sometimes the things are actually, you've just got a dietary thing going on and you're feeling overwhelmed because you've gone low. And I may be saying this and one of you will be like, I need to look into that. So those three are ones that I think a lot of people are taking zinc at the moment. What would I say? Sometimes people are taking too much zinc at the moment, and sometimes that counteracts the magnesium in the body. Okay. And yeah, so you just want to look into making sure that you're eating the right stuff. Sometimes people are like, I'm really broken. I need something really hardcore to fix me. And I would really, really at this time, and I like yang work sometimes, and sometimes I do very yang work, because we're in a shocking time, I really would encourage the more grandmotherly way of working and the more yin medicines right now. So I don't suggest for everybody to go and do DMT or ayahuasca or things. Sometimes it is exactly what somebody needs at a certain time, and you'll know if you've been called. But I really suggest that to be calm, because our systems are quite hypervigilant or hypovigilant. It's better maybe to work with things like flower essences at the moment, and because flower essences balance the mood. And you can't overdose in flower essences, so it's never going to be yang in your system. Sometimes it will bring a healing crisis in something, but in a manageable way. And I think where people are feeling very, very wobbly around things like the workplace or cities, to balance things with things like yarrow flower essence, which is very good if you're quite sensitive in the work situation. This is great for anybody in a therapeutic role. So you can also work with yarrow flower essences mixed with yarrow essence or yarrow tincture, and the tincture is also very fortifying for the body. It's a heal all. So anybody who's in this sort of therapeutic setting, yarrow's great, lantana's great, and you can just look at the Bach flower remedies and look at one for your specific mood and maladies, because it's great. And I've been working a lot with flower essences for quite a few years, and this year I've been very much about the flowers, and it's just oregano's great for just helping you to just process stuff nicely. Oregano flower essence, I've been working with that. Any other ones? I work with ones that come up in my garden when I own a garden, but when I've even got a place and there's stuff, I'm like, what's that for? And I'll look. So I suggest you really see, and I would suggest flower essences at this time. They just help things to just decompress really gently, really beautifully. Okay. And I mentioned, yeah, you can also have different herbs. And I put in dandelion here. in some way because the picture just jumped up at me, but even looking at things like dandelion, dandelion is really fortifying for the liver and can help us to release toxicity. Sometimes we're feeling very overwhelmed because our body is not detoxifying properly. So your organs end up really heavy and toxic. So a gentle cleanse to the liver can be really good with things like dandelion. And dandelion, also look at it, it's sunny. You see, it's also boosts us psychically. So when you work, you can make dandelion root tea. And even dandelion flower essence is beautiful because it gives you like a sun energy. It can make you a little bit more psychic, but in a kind of robust way. So dandelion, look at it, it comes up. It's one of the first that comes up after the winter. And it's almost like, I'm your lifeline, remember the sun. So it comes up before the sun. So, you know, a lot of people think of it as a weed, but it's actually just amazing. So that can be something to take and to just get in, especially I love taking it in like January or February, and it's just getting the sluggishness out of the system, because sometimes we're just overwhelmed because everything's sluggish. So once you get the liver working again, then you'll get the other organs working again. And obviously the liver imbalances are often linked with anger. So sometimes when we're really kind of like just overwhelmed, we're actually, it's anger, it's unprocessed anger. So you see dandelion will clean that out of the body to help you react rather than overreact, okay? Also, homeopathy is brilliant. Again, I'm not going to suggest anything particular because you've all got a very different being, but homeopathy looks at, you know, it's got physical symptoms, it's got emotional types. Are you this sort of person, and who are you at that moment? You know, are you very damp and withdrawn? Do you cry a lot at weird films? You know, it will deconstruct that, and then you antidote that to bring balance into the system. And something again that can be putting us into overwhelm is just not eating the right food. So if we look at things like macrobiotic principles, when we are not eating the whole part of a food, when it's processed, so when we're eating like fast food and convenience food, the body doesn't receive the energy of wholeness. And if we're feeling fragmented and we're not having things like whole grains, I don't even eat grains really, but things like whole quinoa or whole chia, anything that has been processed is taking us away from its connection to source. So eating food that is organic, that you bought it as its whole thing and you prepare it yourself, that sort of thing will also help you ground and calm. And obviously there are foods that are more cooling and calming, things like, you know, broccoli, kale, coconut, cucumber. Obviously we're moving more into the winter in the global north, but you can look up foods that are calming and foods that are grounding. Things like root vegetables are really good for grounding you. And so sometimes you've just been eating on the go, but actually you're just ending up in a kind of wonky rat wheel for a little rat thing, which is just never going to get anywhere because you're not grounding the food, and that will make you imbalanced and overwhelmed. So sometimes just taking a day out to say, you know what, I'm going to spend Sunday cooking and freezing some food for the next few weeks that's organic, and it's, you know, it looked like what it's supposed to be when I got it, you know, that can really help, just taking that day out to get your food back in order. Okay. And a lot of people are totally, and we can speak for ourselves, there have been days where a lot of us are just like a walking, look at Micah, a walking caffeine. And coffee's a culprit here. I saw a meme the other day and it was like me with my caffeine instead of my self-care. And how often do we end up, you know, caffeinating ourselves through, and we just end up with these haggard, drawn, jittery people. So it's quite tricky because a lot of us are quite tired and exhausted because we need more sleep, and we're still in a transitional phase. And I can't say, well, you just have to give up your job and only work 1 hour a day, because that's not feasible for most of us. So the suggestion would be, if you have to have a bit of caffeine, is make it things like green tea. Don't have lots of coffee. Coffee is very acid, so it's also detracting you into yourself. Trying to have more things like matcha tea, or we work on mate tea, or goyusa tea, which is an Amazonian one, which has got loads of other superfood aspects to it. So having a slow release caffeine that doesn't give you the jitters, that's, you see, because you're just basically putting yourself in more overwhelm. Okay, so trying to, if you need the caffeine, bringing it into a subtle caffeine. And for women particularly, the green teas are a lot better, especially as you get older and might start going into like perimenopause and things. They're great antioxidants as well, and they're doing a lot of other things for your body rather than just making you kind of a little bit weird, you know. So softer stimulants if you can. And yeah, you know, we're in this massive chrysalis, and we need to, the universe is trying to say, hey, you don't have to do that anymore. And a lot of us will find that the universe is really begging us to transition to work maybe closer to nature. Look how many people are like, I can't live like this anymore. And the universe is actually just waiting for us to do it, and will support you. And for instance, I'm in my menopause at the moment, and I can't work the way I used to. And I still have these moments where I'm really like, whoa. And then sometimes I'm not. And then I'm like, well, somehow my bills have just got paid. And that was all divinely orchestrated, because the universe wants you to have your yin and your yang moments. And so really, to just really embrace the yin moments, because that's where you're being rewritten into a higher version of yourself who's going to have their needs met. But you see, if you keep kind of just being in your old karmic cycles where you're a victim of circumstance rather than you're empowered to do what you always wanted to do and what you're good at, you will end up just wonky. So it's really good to actually take the time and go. I talk a lot about this with the natural law and time that I work with, is sometimes you suddenly find, there's days that I actually should just sit in bed reading books, because I sometimes have days where I've got a deadline and then I'm like, I'm just not feeling it. My brain doesn't work. And so I've now learned, don't even try to do it. And then the next day I wake up at 5 a.m. with loads of beans and I write it in 20 minutes, whereas it would take me 8 hours and I've done it badly the day before. So starting to let ourselves breathe into the fact that we are allowed to align with natural law and natural time. And the law of natural law and natural time is that we do less work and we're part of our natural habitat more, and we've got community and we're holding space together. And the universe is just wanting us all to do that, wants people to go part-time. It's going to equip us, but it's very scary when we first start to think about that. So another one that's a biggie for people, which is the third one here, is cut away in relationships that aren't working, and jobs that don't feel resonant. Anything where your body is like, that's a no. Sometimes it's a part, and we have to explore that, because sometimes we've got a part that needs to be dealt with because it's a trauma that's about something. But sometimes you just get a very big no from the body, and we try to push through because we've got parts about letting people down or saying no and people pleasing. And so this is the time to really look at, okay, I've been invited out for dinner with these people I used to go to a thing with 4 years ago, and then go, but I feel panicky, and not go and put on a brave face, but actually just go, I'm not feeling it and I don't need to go. And most of my last 20 years has been that, is, I'm so not going out. I'm so not going out. But then I've realized where I put my energy body, and to save the time for the resonant people and things. And it's been a sobering experience because of obviously the conditioning that, you know, we're supposed to be the center of everything and go out all the time and be super popular. But actually, it's brought space for really high teachers and Sangha and community members and the right students and people in my life. And it meant saying no quite a lot of times and getting more comfortable with that. And of course, we all see this all the time, having more time for self-care. Now, I do want to say, sometimes I see a lot of practitioners talking about self-care too much. And again, we have to be careful it doesn't go into self-cherishing, because so we have to nail it and get that work person balance right. Sometimes it's like, I'm not doing that because I have self-care, and it's just like, just get your self-care down and understand how to do it. If we start to lapse too into self-care, we become self-cherishing and we become selfish. So sometimes looking at, okay, I don't feel like I really necessarily, sometimes we're not wanting to do something because we're lazy, okay? And sometimes the best thing you could have done that day was to become selfless and just go, do you know what? I'm going to put myself out for 30 minutes. I'm going to help that child. And you suddenly remember who you are and remember your divine being, part of everything. So there is a sweet spot that you've got to find in between those, because sometimes you do, we have a tendency with the overwhelm to just go, I'm just not going anywhere. I'm not going to do anything. Right? That's what we all have to look into. And sometimes think, is somebody else going to benefit? And not to do it because we think, I'm like the mission, I'm the Messiah because I did that. But to sometimes think of other people's suffering and just go, I can help. I do have 20 minutes. And sometimes that's what you actually needed to activate you into your higher purpose, is to remember, I actually came here to serve, and I've come here to get this going. And it takes you out of your overwhelm to actually sometimes just do something repetitive for somebody else. So it's finding that sweet spot with that. And obviously getting rid of clutter in our lives. So many people, when I spend a lot of time in developing countries, and then when I go back to like Europe, I'm like, everybody's got so much stuff. And it's really cool because they've all got these electrical gadgets and things, but sometimes it's like, wow, imagine if you've got to move house, how stressful that's going to be. It's already stressful for me moving with a suitcase and a half. And that's a lot of the clutter is creating overwhelm. And I think that's to bring us into the simplification of being one with nature, and to go, really, when did I last use that? And actually to be ruthless and give that to people who really need that. And you know, there is a lot of our material shadow is really kicking us at the moment, where we've overcomplicated it by having too much attachment to possessions. And actually that can be where you can have a really big key to deconstructing your overwhelm. And finally on that one, just being less epic about, I think we're so conditioned to be this super being, and especially with Instagram and all of that, which I would veer away from at this time. Kind of just be right now. And we're all, where Jupiter is astrologically at the moment, a lot of people feel a bit foolish because we're like, I don't know who I am. I don't know. And actually we're not supposed to. And around the 29th of December, in the Western astrological chart, Jupiter is going to go into Pisces, and we're going to start to get a bit more of a feeling about the next chapters and what's going to be coming, and who we might be in terms of our community, and what our upgraded job title is going to look a little bit like. But we still don't have that forever. We then have that for 5 months, that transit, and then it goes away for a little while again. So a lot of people feel a little bit silly because they're I don't know who I am right now, and you're not supposed to. So just being more comfortable in knowing that we're in this massive transition, and you're being allowed to gracefully be supported by having a bit of your old world. This is what the astrology is saying, is if you were to be like, actually, I'm about to become a super psychic, but then you work in a bank, the cosmos is saying, don't give up the day job just yet, but maybe start going part-time and start doing a course so that you are an ethical psychic, okay? And do a few readings for friends. That's the actual astrology of now. It's not like, yeah, well, you should have set up your website 3 months ago and you're doing badly. And I think a lot of people, because of this success orientated world we're in think that they're behind. I remember doing a session earlier in February, lots of people thought they were letting the team down because they didn't know quite who they were yet. And it's like, you're not supposed to. So actually understanding that you're getting these flavors that come in and they go right away, like you almost think you've hallucinated it. And it's because the universe is saying, yeah, keep your day job for now so that you can pay your bills, but you don't have to do it so much. But know that you're going to be a very different person in a few months, and you've got time to welcome that in. The gestation of that is actually up till about 25, 26. So frontline workers like us need to be finding these new ways to work with these diversified and expanded beings, but we've got time. And a lot of what we're working with is, we know we're going to be working with these bright, amazing kids coming through, but we need to work with adults at the moment because we're like the clunky version of the kids coming in. So, you know, this is where we're all going to be at. We're going to get these massive insights, these quantum upgrades that are coming through. But in the moment, we have to work from the body and the breath and make things simple and start, you know, simplifying so that we create space in the system. And that's ultimately something we're going to be doing through the course, is we need to take the old stuff out. So teach you how to do that and use these tools on yourself and others to get rid of some of the junk. So just like I'm saying, get rid of clutter, it's like the way you would get rid of clutter on your computer, clutter in your room, and it's clutter in your own system. So that then when all this new information and these new ways of looking come in, you've actually got space for it. Okay. Right, so then I don't need to say too much here. Breath work, it's the key. We come in, we breathe first, we leave, we breathe last. And pranayama is just so valuable for bringing us back into the body, but also for making us feel more expanded. So a lot of us, we're around fearful people right now, and we're psychic people. So a lot of the time, the overwhelm that we're feeling is not even ours. And it can be very hard for us to discern between what's mine and what's theirs. And prana, which is this life force energy that comes in when we're doing certain breath techniques, the prana boosts us. So it actually makes you feel more held in your own energetics. It makes you feel more energized. It makes the mind more clear, and it eliminates anxiety. So in the session on the 7th of October, we're going to be talking you through a few of those and how those work to get you doing that immediately, which is great. And a lot of people think that pranayama is just this alternate nostril breathing because that's the most famous one. And there's a reason why it's famous. It's balancing the Ida and the Pingala, the left and right, the big nadis. But we have different ones we have ones for OCD, we have ones for addictions, we have ones for ADD, all sorts. So I did some training in advanced pranayamas a few years ago, and basically there are protocols written for all clients of all sorts, and those are actually adhering to the DSM trauma and mental health statistical manual criteria. So there's a lot there that you can actually create protocols for clients to cancel things out. But yeah, we'll be teaching you some basic ones. And as I say, we've got more that basically will clear the unconscious, ones that will help boost different chakras so that you're eliminating the overwhelm that's sitting in different parts of your body and different organs. So pranayama is the key for me to just having a daily practice that makes the difference to, am I showing up and am I present? And am I able to keep my autonomous field? Or am I totally blended, just getting by, wobbling and very, very sensitive to other people's psychic imbalance? Because so many of us are just in transference state with others. And that's why pranayama is very, very important, because it will help you to actually work with your own electromagnetic field and to be more boosted around others. Okay. So finally, the course that's coming You all know what it's about, so that's great. It's going to be a 9-month immersion. I'm working a lot with 9-month gestations at the moment, and that's because several natural law, natural time systems work with that, but also because the body, the being, understands that. And I'm really finding it's a beautiful way to inaugurate relationships with people for work, as well as to say, okay, let's have like a 9-month flirtation and then see where we're at after 9 months, so that nobody's having fallout when it doesn't work, because we're here to move through a lot of karma with different people right now. So we come in and out of resonance with each other, and sometimes we are like, oh, I thought we were going to be doing this forever. And actually, if we just look at things more realistic as, okay, this is a 9-month journey, we're going to be more realistic about not taking on too much with other people before time, and then to say, oh, it's sticking, we're supposed to be hanging out, you know. And look at how many people, it's kind of like cosmic Tinder for 9 months. And you know, look at how many people just things don't work with. It takes a long time to unhook from the bittersweet education that was. So again, this 9-month journey will be, let's be in co-inquiry and have a peer group where we can hold space at a challenging time through these astrologies, but being one step ahead. And therefore, as we do that, to be lighthouses for our communities around us who might not be ready for these deeper teachings just yet. And so, as I was saying at the beginning of the call, I am a SWAT, and I just want to get people tooled up with these things because of the nature of the work that I'm doing with the Lama that I'm learning from, and other teachings that I've got ready to go. I'm batching everything off. I want to get everything out to people. So the more people show up, the more I'm like, would you like to do an extra session? And like, if you want to pay a donation, you can go to that one, or we're going to have a sort of co-inquiry group here. And so what we will have is optional extras for people along the way. And so if you're like, I want to know about polyvagal theory, I'll be like, okay, we'll put that in later, and we'll organize a practitioner for you. And then you'll just pay donations. So they get their hourly rate, everybody's getting everything really cheap, and you can just go boom, exponentially. So yes, we're developing a mini community of practitioners and activists to work from within, so that you can really land with this. And as I say, when we realize codes and insights together, not only are we realizing that within our own body temple and within our own being and psyche, we're also helping the species to understand, so we can dedicate that to the alleviation of suffering for all beings. And this, now the findings of morphogenetic consciousness are, we have the species data, and when key groups get certain realizations, it's actually helping the collective to upgrade, so we can dedicate that. And yeah, hopefully it will provide a gateway to higher teaching and wide social and community regeneration. Okay, so that was the little presentation, and we've come in on 90 minutes, which was what I envisaged this being, this session today. But does anybody have any questions quickly on any of that? Well, just know that the first session is on the 7th of October, and we'll start with pranayama. And if you, what we'll be doing with the course per se is people are free to come and kind of test it until probably late November. And then we want to be like, okay, we're the co-inquiry group. Help people to choose if is it for them. We might from time to time have certain discussions that will be open to other people, and some of it will be like, no, this is just us, so that we can keep you all growing in a good way. But then sometimes it will be maybe like a guest lecturer in, and they will come and we might put that open to other people. So the energy exchange is for the course is for the teachings for the 9 months, with extra bonus teachings that I'll share, like extra videos that I make and things like that. And then the idea is that if you want to be part of the peer group 1 month and we do more tools, then you pay like a donation, and then we show up and we do that. So you're almost having sort of basically very cheap mini therapy. Okay, and that's why we would like a cohesive group, because that means that we can map you and what you need in a more deep way. But the idea is therefore that this is getting everybody. You might be like, actually, I know that one, I don't need to come to that one. So what I'm really noticing is everybody's very like cats these days. And sorry, my computer's just doing something. So we thought we'd keep that you can be, and sometimes people are like, I can't show up to that one. So rather than you having to pay to go to them all, you just come when you can. And but you get the backbone of the teachings. And I will set up some sort of forum for us all, which we'll discuss, I think, on the first session, because I think a lot of us are getting sick of Facebook. What we've found before is when we set up forums, half the people don't use them. So I've done a lot of piloting on using forums for some of these real-time courses, but I would love your input if you do actually come to do the course. Okay. Anything else, anybody, before we sign off? Any questions or any input? Oh, thank you. Okay,
Yeah,
just to answer what's TRE. TRE is trauma release exercises. It's tremoring, and it's very, very effective for, it's like wriggling. It's just like animals wriggle. If you see in nature a wildlife film where there's a lion chasing a gazelle and the gazelle manages to live, it then goes to a watering hole, goes like this, and then it just goes off and does its thing. And a lot of theorists posit that we used to do that. We used to know how to tremor and shake. And what by not tremoring and shaking, and some of this is because of social conditioning, this is where trauma gets stored in the psoas muscle. And if we start to learn, basically the man who taught me said that if you did TRE 30 times, you would clear all your trauma. So anytime you have something traumatic, it's very soothing. And I will talk some more in the session. I'm not the one, well, no, I am the one leading that bit, but Christian Platz is going to be teaching us all the inner workings of the psoas muscle as well, so you can really understand how this all works. I've had amazing results with just doing it when there's been a traumatic situation, or even somebody who might make me hypervigilant, meditating on them and doing TRE, and then just clearing any trauma I have around that person in that situation. So it's profound and it's so simple. And so again, you're going to have that. We're going to teach you how to do that. You're going to be able to just wriggle. And that means that even if we've got traumatic months coming ahead, you can just be like, oh, that was a bit of a weird day. And you can just lie in the evening and wriggle for 15 minutes and just not let that accumulate. So again, you're going to start coming at things fresh rather than up here. Okay. And again, it's once you've nailed it, I would say, you do it for a while, and you can teach other people. Obviously, there are people who do, for instance, with the tsunamis that happened, well, some time ago, I don't know the year anymore, a lot of TRE practitioners went to places like Thailand, and they would get big, huge halls with 200 people in them and just they get them tremoring so that they could deal after being in that horrific situation. So there you go. Okay, and yes, I will send you the audio. I hope you were able to hear that. I'm sorry about the not so good connection. I know that the place I'm staying in on the 7th is a good connection. At least I've been told that. Fingers crossed. And if after that I'm in a good place, I'm just in the process of traveling. What was I going to say? If at any point the recordings aren't great or the connection's not great, I'll always send you out recordings and extra videos, because I've been making videos about some of these. So there's lots of resources coming. Okay. So it was lovely to connect with you all. Nice to see you. And yeah, keep in touch. Please bear in mind.
Thank you. It was brilliant.
Yay. No, Mike, can you put Madalena's email address in, please? Madalena is the person to talk to about the course. Mike, can you maybe put you up as well, just in case? But Madalena is doing the admin of the course. I'm going to be offline on silent retreat until like the 5th. So if you are doing the course and nothing's coming to your inbox, Madalena will send you some information, but the links for the 7th will come out. I will book those in. once I've got off retreat. So don't worry, they'll come in for you around the 6th or the 7th. All right. So it's in my note of things to do. So it will come to you. And that's Madalena's email address if you've got any course related questions. Okay. And really lovely to connect. Yay. Take care, everybody. Have a lovely Sunday. And speak to you soon.
Too. All the best.
Thank you so much. That was beautiful.
Take care. Ciao, ciao, lovelies. Bye.
Bye.